We have just received word of a decision in one of the most consequential cases before the Supreme Court in decades. The justices have reached a final ruling on the Mississippi abortion law that prohibits nearly all abortions after 15 weeks and directly challenges Roe v. Wade.
Lester, in this historic decision, the Supreme Court has now overturned Roe v. Wade, and the follow-on case called Casey, in which the abortion right was made nationwide. Those two rulings stood for the proposition that states could not ban abortion before the age of viability. They could restrict it during that period up to about 23 weeks, but they couldn't ban it. Now the Supreme Court has taken that guarantee away. Lester, this is the first time the Supreme Court has ever granted a constitutional right, which it did so when Roe was decided in 1973, and then took it away, a popular right that was widely recognized. But this also now means that in roughly half the country, abortion is, as of now, or soon will be, illegal.
And the reason it will be illegal is because those states have decided to do so. So it's, of course, it's been triggered. And of course, today, and I think in what scripts were written months ago, a 6-3 decision, the Supreme Court has overturned Roe versus Wade. It was the most predictable thing we could see. The leaked document did show us that a couple of months ago. Let's get into some details of what the justices that ruled on this did say. Justice Samuel Alito, as expected, wrote the majority opinion that tossed out Roe, as well as a 1992 Supreme Court decision upholding abortion rights in a case known as Planned Parenthood versus Casey. He was joined in that judgment by the 5 other conservatives on the court, including Chief Justice Roberts. The court's 3 liberal justices filed a dissenting opinion to the ruling, which quickly drew protests to the Supreme Court building on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. Alito wrote this: "We hold that Roe and Casey must be overruled. The Constitution makes no reference to abortion, and no such right is implicitly protected by any constitutional provision, including the one on which the defenders of Roe and Casey now chiefly rely. The due process clause of the 14th Amendment," is what Alito continued. "That provision," he said, "has been held to guarantee some rights that are not mentioned in the Constitution, but any such right must be, quote, deeply rooted in this nation's history and tradition and implicit in the concept of ordered liberty." Remember those lines. "It's time to heed the Constitution and return to the issue of abortion to the people's elected representatives," is what he also wrote. "The case that triggered Roe's demise after nearly a half century, known as Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, is related to a Mississippi law that banned nearly all abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy," which is what they mentioned in that clip at the beginning there on NBC News, Jessica. So we have all these different parameters and different opinions being thrown, but we've seen that from those 6 justices, the conservative justices on the court, they were put there specifically for things like this and something else that we're gonna get to in a couple more stories from here. It seems that the minority opinion of the country is winning.
Absolutely, yeah, and the due process clause, I mean, there have been timeless cases where people on the right are talking about this, saying that this is a poor foundation to secure the right to abortion in this country. They rely on, the right to privacy, which is described in the due process clause. But our right to same-sex marriage comes from that same part of the due process clause, the right to privacy. So are we going to see that overturned as well? It's absolutely the case that the minority is running the country via the Supreme Court. People who are not elected to serve, 9 people are making decisions that the vast majority of our country, disagree with. And the only thing I think that's giving me any hope at all is there's a really interesting case out of Florida right now. And if we want to talk about, what new precedent or what other part of the Constitution can our right to an abortion hinge on, I would say actually religious freedom. And so this really interesting case that's just in a county court is a synagogue that is suing the state for the abortion ban, because in the Jewish faith, if there's a threat to a woman's mental health or her physical health, she should have an abortion. And so that's the kind of case that's directly about religious freedom that I think we could see going before the Supreme Court. But if it's the Supreme Court we have today, do I think that they'll rule in favor of the synagogue? Unfortunately, probably not.
Well, actually, and when we look at the Supreme Court, as we've heard, they're carrying the water for many Christian conservatives in this country who believe that when they say something like, "Oh, religious liberty," what they're actually saying is Christianity dominance. our religious liberty. And liberty being, we tell you what we believe and you have to go along with it because we're the supreme beings of this country. Let's not mince any words about this. Anything that's getting now pushed through from this actually very long held plan to get these types of justices on the Supreme Court will favor the richest, the whitest, the most cis, if we can say these types of things, if those things exist, cisgendered male in the country. That's just that's how these things work. And they go for it with education. They go for it with housing. They go for it with our judicial systems itself. So this wasn't an accident. This is exactly what Mitch McConnell was talking about. So let's go ahead and name the names of the people who are responsible for it. Mitch McConnell talked about this when he rejected Obama's Supreme Court pick and said, well, I don't care. This is what we're doing. In this year, we will not appoint Barack Obama's Supreme Court pick because we need to implement people on the court that do what we want them to do. Not because the way things are actually working when presidents are supposed to appoint Supreme Court justices. Mitch McConnell's a part about this. Nancy Pelosi is a part about this, and the establishment of the Democratic Party that continues to back establishment Democrats who then support things like this. This has been getting floated around on Twitter this whole morning. Henry Cuellar, who won in Texas, establishment Democrat, who is in support of things like this. But the party coalesced around him when a progressive challenger came forward that represents the actual majority of Americans. This is the state we're in, and these are just a couple of reasons why. And our society hasn't really caught up with what it is that's happening yet on a large scale. Your last thoughts on this before we move on?
Yeah, absolutely. Republicans always talking about being the party of freedom, and you're exactly right that we need to interrogate what they mean by that. Freedom for who? It's freedom for white people, freedom for men, freedom for people who have money, and people who are Christians. That's exactly what they mean. My mom said to me this morning when I broke the news to her, my daughters have less rights than I did. That's really the state that we are in this country. And today I'm honestly just worried about women who are living in red states, who are going to need to have an abortion for whatever reason, who are going to get one that is unsafe and be disabled, lose their ability to have children or lose their life. These are dangerous procedures, and many people can't afford to travel to states where they can get access to this care. And oftentimes abortions are medically necessary where a woman's life is threatened by her pregnancy and she needs an abortion to live. So to some extent, this is also about the right to life, not just religious freedom or the right to privacy. And these are really important things to be thinking about today, because in this moment, we've got to fight, right? There's not going to be a solution. There's not going to be a moment where they say, well, maybe, as states, we should, slow things down and not pass these abortion bans right away. I don't think we're going to see that. They're going to pass them as soon as they can. And so as people, we've got to come together in solidarity and take care of one another. One thing that gives me a lot of hope is, there are these people making videos on the internet like, hey, I live out on this farm in a state where there's no threat of abortion bans. If anyone gets a COVID case and wants to come over and heal for a few days, you can come over. We really need that kind of solidarity right now.
Yeah, well, and as we go out of this, just look at the map. As you mentioned, states that already implemented or will implement have trigger laws in place or already had complete and total abortion bans in the first place, as you can see there. And with that, while you're looking at that, just remember, right now, today, 61% majority of the United States adults say that abortion should be legal in all or most cases, while only 37% think abortion should be illegal in all or most cases. And that's the United States of America, this country that talks about the shining example on the hill that does the bidding of its people. Not the case. It's just not the case.